The royal guards are known all over the world for their proud and serious faces. They stand tall and still like statues, wearing bright red coats and shiny black hats that look almost like giant bears. People come from far and wide just to see them stand perfectly still, without moving a muscle or even blinking during their long shifts. They guard important places like palaces and castles, protecting kings, queens, and other members of the royal family. Their job is very important and needs a lot of discipline and focus. Every day, the royal guards follow a strict routine. They wake up early in the morning before the sun rises. They put on their smart uniforms, making sure every button is in the right place and every crease is sharp. Their big black hats, called bearskins, are heavy and can be uncomfortable, especially in hot weather. But the guards never complain. They practice walking and standing so they can look perfect during their duty hours. The guards do not only wear their uniforms for show. Their clothes and training are symbols of tradition, pride, and honor. They have been guarding royal palaces for hundreds of years, and the way they stand and move has been passed down through generations. For many people, the royal guards are more than just soldiers. They are a symbol of their country's history and respect. When a guard takes his post, he must be ready to face anything. Sometimes tourists come very close, trying to get their pictures taken or trying to make the guards smile or laugh. But the guards have one rule: they must never break character. This means they cannot show any emotion or reaction, no matter what happens. They must stay serious, strong, and still. It can be hard because people sometimes shout, wave, or even try to distract them by making funny faces. But the royal guards are trained to ignore all of this. Their focus is on their duty and their respect for the royal family they protect. People admire the guards for this ability to stay calm and collected, even when it is difficult. Seeing a guard stand perfectly still and not react makes many visitors feel like they are witnessing something special and important. Not everyone knows, though, that behind those serious faces are real people with feelings and stories. The guards are not statues. They are men and women who have families, hobbies, and dreams. Some have joined the royal guards because they want to serve their country, while others are proud to be part of a tradition that is hundreds of years old. One guard, for example, is named James. James grew up in a small town, far from the city and the busy life of the palace. Since he was a boy, James loved history and stories about kings, queens, and knights. He dreamed of wearing the red coat and standing in front of the palace, protecting the royal family just like the guards in the stories he read. When he grew up, James worked hard to pass the tests and training needed to become a royal guard. Now, every day he wears the uniform with pride and stands tall, knowing he is part of something greater than himself. James and the other guards know that their job is not easy. They spend hours on their feet without moving, sometimes in cold rain or under the hot sun. They must be alert and ready for any situation. Even though they do not show it, many of the guards find comfort and pride in knowing that their work helps keep the royal family safe. The palace itself is a place full of history and beauty. It has large gardens with colorful flowers and tall trees. The walls are made of thick stones, and inside there are rooms filled with beautiful paintings, shiny furniture, and precious artifacts. The royal guards walk along the palace walls every day, watching over the place where kings and queens have lived for centuries. Visitors from all over the world come to see the palace and the guards. Some come for the history, others for the beauty, and many for the chance to see the famous changing of the guard ceremony. This ceremony is a special event where one group of guards replaces another, and it is done with great precision and tradition. Tourists line up early to watch the guards march in perfect time, their boots making sharp sounds on the stone path. Despite the busy crowds and loud cameras, the royal guards stand steady. They do not smile, wave, or talk. Their job is to be strong and silent like the walls of the palace. This makes the guards seem almost like part of the building itself, and many people say it feels like time stops when the guards are on duty. Yet, beneath this serious and quiet appearance, the guards sometimes face moments that make their hearts warm, even though they must not show it. They are not robots. They see the smiles of children, the excitement of visitors, and the beauty of the palace gardens. Sometimes they hear stories from tourists and feel proud of their role in this living history. In this world of tradition and discipline, every day is a challenge. The guards must balance their duty with the small moments of kindness they feel inside. They carry the weight of history on their shoulders, but also the simple joy of serving their country and sharing a piece of its story with the world. One such day was about to begin. A day that would bring a surprising moment, one that would break the usual silence and stillness of the royal guards. It started like any other, with the guards lining up for their shift, their uniforms spotless and their faces set in the familiar, serious expression. But something special was about to happen, something that no one expected. A little boy full of energy and curiosity would soon approach the guard's post. He was not like the other visitors who stayed behind the ropes or watched quietly. This boy was different. He wanted to get closer, to see the guards up close and maybe even talk to them. His excitement was clear in his bright eyes and wide smile. For the guards, this boy was a test, a challenge to stay calm and still, to keep their serious faces no matter how funny or sweet the boy might be. It was a moment when their training and discipline would be put to the test in a way that was more personal and touching than usual. This day, like many before it, would remind everyone that behind the uniforms and the serious faces are people with hearts that care. It would show that even the strongest and most disciplined can find joy in small moments of kindness and connection. And so, the story of the royal guards and the little boy was about to begin. A story of tradition meeting warmth, of discipline meeting laughter, and of strength meeting the innocence of a child. On that bright and sunny day, the palace grounds were filled with visitors from many places. People were walking around, taking pictures and enjoying the beautiful gardens and grand buildings. The air was filled with the sounds of happy voices, the clicking of cameras, and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. It was the perfect day to watch the royal guards perform their duties, and many families had come especially to see them. Among the visitors was a little boy named Oliver. Oliver was about 6 years old, with bright eyes full of wonder and a smile that could light up a room. He was visiting the palace with his parents, but unlike many other children who stayed close to their families or quietly watched from a distance, Oliver was full of energy and curiosity. He wanted to explore, to see everything up close, and especially to get a closer look at the royal guards. Oliver had heard stories about the guards from his grandparents and had seen pictures of them in books. He loved their bright red uniforms and the tall black hats that looked so different from anything else he had ever seen. To him, the guards seemed like brave knights from a fairy tale, standing tall and strong, protecting the palace and the royal family. He was fascinated by their serious faces and how they never moved or smiled no matter what. As Oliver and his parents walked near the guard's post, he could hardly contain his excitement. He wanted to see the guards up close, to watch them carefully and maybe even say hello. His parents watched him closely, knowing that the guards were very serious and that visitors were usually expected to keep a respectful distance. But Oliver was not like other children. His curiosity was stronger than his fear, and his desire to connect with the guards was pure and genuine. Oliver slowly stepped closer to the guard's post. The guards stood in their usual places, facing forward with perfect posture. Their eyes were steady and their faces were calm and serious. They wore their red coats, polished boots, and tall bearskin hats, looking like they had stepped out of history books. To Oliver, they were real-life heroes, and he wanted to be close to them. As Oliver reached the edge of the post, he looked up at one of the guards. The guard was a tall man with kind eyes, but his face was calm and showed no expression. Oliver thought about the stories he had heard and decided to try to get the guard's attention. He made a small smile and waved his hand gently. The guard did not move or react. He remained still like a statue. Oliver giggled quietly. He decided to try again. This time he made a funny face, scrunching up his nose and sticking out his tongue playfully. People nearby chuckled softly, enjoying the innocent moment. But the guards kept their silence. They were trained to stay serious and not react no matter what anyone did. It was part of their long tradition and discipline. Oliver was not discouraged. He loved the challenge. He tried other funny faces and little gestures, hoping to make even the smallest change in the guard's expression. For the guards, this was a test of their training and patience. Many visitors had tried to make them laugh or smile, but they had always stayed strong and silent. Around the post, a small crowd began to gather. People noticed the little boy's playful attempts and watched the guards carefully. Some whispered to each other, wondering if the guards would finally react. The atmosphere was light and joyful, filled with anticipation. The moment felt different from the usual visits. One of the guards, whose name was James, noticed the boy's excitement. James was young but had already served as a royal guard for a few years. He loved his job and took great pride in his role. Yet, like all guards, he was trained to remain serious and not show emotion during his shift. But as he looked at Oliver, something inside him softened. James saw the pure joy in the boy's eyes. He remembered being a child himself, dreaming of becoming a guard and standing tall in a bright red coat. He knew how special this moment was for Oliver. The boy was not trying to be rude or disrespectful. He was simply curious and full of wonder. For a brief second, James felt the weight of his role lighten as he connected with the innocence before him. Oliver's little hands reached up, trying to touch the shiny helmet the guard wore. The helmet was heavy and smooth, and Oliver imagined it was a crown or a magical hat that gave the guard strength. James remained still but allowed Oliver to come closer than usual. He could feel the warmth of the child's excitement and decided that this small moment of kindness was worth it. As Oliver poked gently at the helmet, James's eyes twinkled ever so slightly, just enough to show a hint of kindness without breaking the tradition of seriousness. The people watching smiled quietly, understanding the small miracle of this gentle moment. It was a rare sight, a royal guard almost breaking character for a little boy's curiosity. But the rules were clear. The guards must never laugh or talk during their duty, so James stayed silent but thought of a way to make this moment special for Oliver, without breaking the discipline of his role. He reached into his pocket and found a small badge, a token given to guards for special occasions. It was shiny and had the royal emblem on it. James bent down just a little, careful not to move too much, and quietly placed the badge in Oliver's small hand. The boy's eyes grew wide with surprise and joy. He looked up at James and smiled brightly, feeling like he had just received a treasure from a real knight. The crowd around them clapped softly, happy to witness such a warm moment between a guard and a child. Oliver's parents smiled too, proud of their son's bravery and excitement. They watched as Oliver showed the badge to his friends and family, telling them the story of how a royal guard gave it to him. For Oliver, this was a memory he would keep forever, a moment when the serious world of the guards met the playful heart of a child. For the guards, it was a reminder of why they did what they did. Their duty was not only to protect the royal family, but also to inspire respect and admiration. And sometimes it meant showing a little kindness in the midst of discipline. This balance between tradition and humanity was what made their role so special. As the crowd began to move on and the day continued, James returned to his usual serious stance. His face became calm again and his eyes focused forward, but inside he felt a quiet happiness knowing that for a moment, he had made a difference in a little boy's life. Oliver walked away holding the badge tightly, feeling proud and happy. He knew he had made a new friend in the Royal Guard, even if that friend had to keep a serious face most of the time. For Oliver, the story of the day would become a favorite tale to tell, about the time when the Royal Guards broke character just a little for him. And so, the challenge was met. The Royal Guards stayed strong and silent as they always did. But a small moment of warmth and connection had changed the usual routine. It was a day that visitors and guards alike would remember, a day when tradition and kindness met in a special way. After the small crowd had slowly moved away, and the laughter from the little boys' playful faces faded into the background, the royal guards returned to their serious and quiet watch. The palace grounds settled back into the calm and peaceful atmosphere they usually had during the day. Yet beneath the surface, the moment with the little boy had left something stirring in the heart of one particular guard, James. For James, the experience was not just a brief interruption to his day. It had awakened feelings that he often kept hidden under the weight of his uniform and the strict rules of his role. As he stood silently, with his back straight and his eyes fixed forward, James could feel his heart beating a little faster, and his mind filled with thoughts about the meaning of his work and the people he served. Though James was trained to be strong and unshakable, he was human. Behind the stiff posture and unchanging face was a man with emotions, memories, and hopes. The moment with the boy, Oliver, reminded James of his own childhood and how, as a young boy, he had dreamed of standing exactly where he was now, guarding the palace and serving his country. But life as a royal guard was not always easy. The hours spent standing still could be long and tiring. The weather could be harsh, sometimes freezing cold in the winter, other times scorching hot in the summer. James and his fellow guards could not talk to each other or respond to the visitors no matter how tempting it might be. They were expected to remain silent and serious at all times, showing the strength and discipline their role demanded. On this day, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, James's thoughts began to wander. He thought about the families who came to the palace to see the guards, about children like Oliver who looked up to them with wide eyes and hope. James realized that for many people, the royal guards were more than just soldiers. They were a symbol of pride, courage, and tradition. To a child, the guards were like real-life heroes from storybooks, standing tall and strong to protect something precious. But James also knew that behind the bright red coats and stiff hats were people who sometimes felt lonely or misunderstood. The rules of the job left little room for warmth or personal connection during working hours. Guards were expected to hide their feelings and put duty above all else. This made James wonder, how could he balance the seriousness of his role with the kindness and compassion he felt inside? The moment with Oliver had shown him that small acts of kindness could mean a great deal, not only to the people they served, but also to the guards themselves. Meanwhile, Oliver was also feeling a mix of excitement and wonder. As he held the shiny badge James had given him, he could not stop smiling. To Oliver, the badge was like a magic treasure, a symbol of friendship and a memory he would cherish forever. He showed it proudly to his parents, who were happy to see their son so thrilled. Oliver's mind kept returning to the guard who had given him the badge. He thought about the serious face that had almost smiled, and the gentle way the guard had let him come close. To Oliver, it was a moment that made the royal guard seem less like statues and more like real people, people who could be kind and caring, even if only in small ways. But as Oliver enjoyed his treasure, he also began to notice something else. The other guards around the palace were still standing perfectly still, their faces serious and their eyes sharp. They did not react to the children or the visitors in the same way. Oliver understood that his moment with James was very special, something rare and precious. Back at the guard post, James felt the eyes of his fellow guards watching him carefully. Even though they did not say anything, the other guards knew what had happened. Moments like these were uncommon, and some guards might see them as distractions from their duty. James wondered if he had done the right thing by giving the badge to Oliver, breaking the unspoken rules just a little. He remembered the strict instructions they had received during their training. Never show emotion, never respond to visitors, and always maintain the image of strength and discipline. For years, these rules had shaped the way James acted and felt on duty. But today, something had changed. James began to understand that sometimes the greatest strength was not just in standing still and silent, but in showing a little kindness and humanity. He thought about how small gestures, like the one he had made with Oliver, could brighten someone's day and remind people that even the strongest among us have hearts that care. As the day went on, James found it harder to focus on his usual routine. His thoughts drifted back to Oliver and the joy in the boy's eyes. He felt a quiet happiness that was different from the pride he usually carried. It was softer and warmer, a feeling that came from connecting with another person, even in a small way. The other guards continued their watch, their faces steady and serious. Some may have felt a bit surprised or even unsure about James's small act of kindness, but for James it was a moment of growth, a reminder that their duty was not only about discipline, but also about being part of a larger community. Throughout the palace grounds, visitors continued to enjoy their day. Families took pictures, children ran through the gardens, and the guards remained vigilant. But in the quiet spaces between the footsteps and the soft sounds of the palace, something had shifted, a small crack in the wall of tradition that allowed a little warmth and connection to shine through. Later, as the sun began to set and the day's duties came to an end, James thought about the story he would tell his family that night. He would share the memory of the little boy who had touched his heart and reminded him of why he wore the uniform. It was a story about duty, discipline, and the power of kindness, a story that made his work feel even more meaningful. James understood that being a royal guard was not just about standing still or looking serious. It was about being part of a tradition that respected the past, while embracing the humanity of the present. And sometimes that meant breaking character just a little, to show that behind the uniform was a person who cared. As the palace lights began to glow softly in the evening, James stood quietly, feeling proud and peaceful. He knew that tomorrow would bring another day of duty, another day of discipline, but he also knew that he would carry the memory of this special moment with Oliver in his heart forever. And somewhere nearby, a little boy named Oliver was falling asleep, clutching his shiny badge tightly. He dreamed of knights and castles, of brave guards and friendly smiles. He dreamed of a world where even the strongest could show kindness, and where moments of warmth could make a lasting difference. The next morning, the palace grounds were quiet but alive with a gentle energy. The royal guards had gathered early, preparing for another day of duty. Their uniforms were crisp, their boots polished, and their hats perfectly in place. They stood tall and serious, ready to protect the royal family and uphold the proud traditions that had been passed down for centuries. James arrived at his post with a calm confidence. Even though his heart still held the warmth from the previous day's special moment, he reminded himself of the importance of discipline. The palace expected nothing less than complete professionalism from its guards. Still, deep inside, James felt a new sense of purpose. The small act of kindness he had shared with Oliver had reminded him that being a guard was not only about rules and silence, but also about connection and humanity. As James took his position, he noticed something unexpected. A group of children from a nearby school had come to visit the palace, their eyes wide with excitement and wonder. They wore bright uniforms and carried small backpacks, chatting happily as they walked through the gardens. Among them was Oliver, holding tightly to the shiny badge he had received the day before. Oliver's smile was as bright as ever, and he looked around eagerly, hoping to see the royal guards again. When he spotted James standing tall and serious at his post, Oliver's face lit up with joy. He waved excitedly, and though James remained still and silent, Oliver felt a special connection. The children began to gather near the guard's post, their voices full of questions and curiosity. They whispered among themselves, wondering what it was like to be a royal guard. Oliver, with his new badge shining on his jacket, felt proud to share the story of how one guard had broken character just a little to give him the badge. His friends listened with wide eyes, imagining what it must be like to stand so still and strong. Watching the children's fascination, James realized that these moments of connection were important. The royal guards were not just symbols of history. They were part of the present, inspiring new generations and reminding people of the values of courage, respect, and kindness. As the day went on, James noticed that other guards began to soften too, in small and subtle ways. Some would offer a slight nod or a gentle glance to the children. Others, while maintaining their serious expressions, seemed more relaxed and approachable. It was as if the small act of kindness from the day before had quietly spread through the group. This change did not go unnoticed by the visitors. Parents smiled as their children pointed excitedly at the guards. Teachers whispered to each other about how important it was for children to see both strength and kindness in the people who served their country. The palace grounds felt warmer and more welcoming, even within the strict rules of tradition. For James, this was a turning point. He felt that he had found a way to balance the discipline of his role with the compassion he wanted to show. He understood that kindness did not weaken the guards' duty. Instead, it made their service even more meaningful. Later that afternoon, during a quiet moment, James was approached by the commanding officer. The officer spoke quietly but kindly, asking about the previous day's incident with the little boy and the badge. James was honest and respectful, explaining why he had chosen to give the badge to Oliver. He told the officer how the boy's excitement had reminded him of the importance of connecting with the people they served. To James's surprise, the commanding officer nodded thoughtfully. He said that while discipline and tradition were essential, the guards were also representatives of the royal family and their values. Moments of kindness and humanity could inspire trust and respect in ways that strict silence could not always achieve. The officer encouraged James to continue his work with the same dedication, but to remember the power of small acts of kindness. He reminded James that every guard was a person, and that sometimes showing a little heart was the strongest thing they could do. This conversation gave James a renewed sense of confidence. He realized that he was not alone in wanting to bring a little warmth to a role that often seemed cold and distant. He understood that the balance between strength and kindness was something to be proud of, not ashamed. As the sun began to set, James looked around the palace grounds and saw the happy faces of the visitors, the children playing and the proud guard standing tall. He felt grateful to be part of this living tradition, one that honored the past while embracing the present with compassion. Meanwhile, Oliver's story spread quietly through the palace community. Other children who heard about his special moment wanted to visit the guards and learn more about their work. Parents and teachers spoke about the importance of teaching respect, kindness, and pride in one's country. Oliver's simple joy had sparked something bigger, a reminder that even small moments could have a lasting impact. That night, as James prepared to rest, he thought about the day's events and the lessons he had learned. He felt a deep sense of peace knowing that he had found a way to be both a strong protector and a kind human being. He looked forward to the days ahead, ready to serve with honor and heart. For Oliver, the badge still gleamed in the light of his bedside lamp. It was more than a shiny object. It was a symbol of friendship, hope, and the belief that kindness could shine even in the most serious places. And so, the story of the royal guards and the little boy continued. A story of tradition and warmth, strength and compassion. It was a story that would be told again and again, reminding everyone that behind every uniform is a person, and behind every serious face is a heart that can care. Days turned into weeks, and the story of the little boy and the royal guard who gave him a badge became something special, whispered among visitors and guards alike. It was not a story about breaking rules or losing discipline, but about how a small act of kindness could bring people closer and make traditions feel alive. Oliver's badge became his most treasured possession. He carried it with him everywhere, on school days, family outings, and even when he went to bed. It reminded him not only of the kind guard named James, but also of the magic that kindness can bring into the world. Oliver's friends listened eagerly when he told them the story, and many of them started dreaming about one day seeing the royal guards themselves. At the palace, the small change in the guards' behavior continued. The royal guards remained disciplined and professional, but now they found ways to connect with the people around them without breaking their important traditions. Sometimes they would offer a subtle nod or a brief glance of encouragement to children watching from the sidelines. These small gestures made the visitors feel seen and appreciated, and it brought a softer, more human touch to the grand and historic palace. James, too, felt changed by the experience. He became more aware of the balance between duty and compassion, strength and kindness. His colleagues noticed a new lightness in him, a quiet confidence that came from knowing that he could be both a serious protector and a warm human being. James carried the lessons of that day with him, proud to serve with honor and heart. The palace staff began to speak more openly about the importance of kindness alongside tradition. They saw how this small moment had brought joy not only to visitors but also to the guards themselves. For many, it was a reminder that behind the bright red coats and tall black hats were real people who cared deeply about their roles and the people they served. Over time, the story of Oliver and the Royal Guard became a symbol of hope. It was shared in schools and community centers as an example of how kindness could be found in unexpected places, even in the most serious and formal of roles. Teachers used it to teach children about respect, courage, and the power of small acts of goodness. Oliver grew up with a deep respect for the Royal Guards and the traditions they upheld. But more importantly, he learned that even the strongest people can show kindness without losing their strength. He carried this lesson into his own life, inspiring those around him to be brave and caring in their own ways. For James and the other guards, the experience strengthened their sense of purpose. They continued to stand tall and silent, protecting the palace with the same discipline and pride as always. But now they knew that their duty also included showing the world that strength and kindness could live side by side. Visitors to the palace continued to marvel at the royal guards. They saw not only the history and the discipline, but also the humanity behind the uniforms. And for many, the memory of the little boy who broke the silence with his laughter and curiosity remained a reminder that even the most serious roles could be filled with warmth and connection. In the end, the story was not just about a moment when a royal guard broke character for a child. It was about the lasting impact of kindness, a kindness that reminded everyone that behind every tradition are people with hearts full of care. It showed that sometimes the smallest gestures can create the strongest bonds, and that true strength comes from being both disciplined and compassionate. As the years passed, The palace stood proud and beautiful, guarded by the royal guards who remained symbols of honor and tradition. But more than that, they became symbols of kindness, connection, and the belief that even in the most serious places, there is always room for a little warmth, and somewhere, far away from the palace, a grown-up Oliver carried that warmth inside him, sharing the story of the royal guards with new generations, reminding them that every heart, no matter how strong, can shine with kindness.